It's Region Pack Day again, and this time we're heading to North America, specifically the Southwest. If you've been working on a California-inspired build like I have, you're going to adore this pack. But even if you're building a North American city outside of California, there's plenty for you here as well. This region pack has everything you need to build an authentic Californian city, along with assets that fit just about any city on the continent. But more on that a little bit later on in the video. First, let's give credit to the creators. Bad Idea, BadPeanut, Bsquikelhausen, Darf, Geze, Gruny, King Leno, and Smilies. Bad Idea is an OG creator, potentially best known for creating the Parking Lot Roads mod for Cities Skylines 1. I used several of their assets in Clearwater County, including their post office, rural power lines, network fences, and their parking structure, which I think is one of the best in the game. BadPeanut is a legend in both Cities Skylines 1 and Cities Skylines 2. And he helped me get from Helsinki to Tampere by train, something for which I will forever be indebted to them. But more important than that, they're behind countless iconic assets from Cities Skylines 1. Everything from transit buildings to transit vehicles, roads, even a roller coaster. He also was the creator behind the Sports Venues Content Creator Pack, which is one of my favorites for Cities Skylines 1. And for Cities Skylines 2, he was instrumental in the creation of the Road Builder mod and has been the driving force behind every region pack as part of Paradox's team. Bsquikelhausen, known as Pineapple Guy for anyone who watched the Finland stream, is a frequent rail contributor on my streams and the person who introduced me to long drink in Finland. But more importantly, he's known for top-tier train and vehicle assets, and is the creator behind the Vehicles of the World pack for Cities Skylines 1. He's also an incredibly talented video creator with criminally underrated CS1 content that I'd highly recommend you check out if you're looking for some. And then we have Darf, who's a growables master with over 100 assets in the Steam Workshop, many of which are inspired by New York City. Clearwater County fans might even recognize some of his work throughout Van Buren, and I nearly used his brewery asset in Shorewood, but I just never got around to it. Geze might sound familiar because they also contributed to the French pack. Additionally, they're the creator behind the Seaside Resorts Content Creator Pack for Cities Skylines 1 and have nearly 200 assets in the Steam Workshop, many of which are Paris-inspired. And then we have Gruny, another French pack contributor with over 100 beautifully crafted assets spanning props, vehicles, and buildings on the CS1 Workshop. A graphic designer by trade, they have an impressive attention to detail that's evident in all of their work. Then we have King Leno, a community legend with over 400 assets in the Steam Workshop, all of which are incredibly realistic and impressively detailed. His work is everywhere in my CS1 series, including Verde Beach, considering he created the University City and Shopping Malls content creator packs. Last but not least is Smilies, who has nearly 400 assets in the Steam Workshop, focusing on North America. They're another community legend, and I'm not just singing their praises because of the number of Midwestern assets they have on the workshop, though that certainly helps. Their attention to detail is incredible, and I personally appreciate how thoroughly they cover the entire continent with consistently excellent work. These creators are absolute heavyweights, and they delivered a fantastic pack including, by my count, 7 new zoning districts, 360 new growable assets, 8 service buildings, and 7 signature buildings. That's 382 assets in total, just under the French and UK asset packs in terms of size. So in this video, I'll show you where to get the pack, tour each asset, and then I'll share my overall impressions of the region pack. Now, normally I place the assets in an existing build as part of this video, but I'm going to redirect you into another video as soon as this one's complete, where I completely transform Segunda Beach with the assets and make it feel truly Californian. And I'm incredibly excited to show you all of these assets, so without further ado, let's jump right in. To install the USA Southwest Region Pack, head to Paradox Mods either in-game or via a web browser and search for USA Southwest Pack. Once you find it, you'll need to add it to a playset. I'll add it to both Magnolia County and Segunda Beach, and then it will immediately begin downloading. This region pack is large, coming in at 5.8 gigabytes. That means that only the UK pack is larger. Now, in my opinion, this size is justified, but I mention this because if you have a limited amount of hard drive space, you might want to pick your region packs carefully. And now that we've installed our region pack, let's head into the game. Before we take a look at each of the assets individually, I want to talk about my organization of the assets. Now, I've organized these all by size and zoning category. In terms of size, the shallowest assets will be at the bottom of one of these categories. The deepest assets will be on the top. I'll also organize them in terms of width, so things on the left of an asset category will be the narrowest, things on the right will be the widest. But just like always, I will have this outlined as a guide on my website, cityplannerplays.com. But new is that I'm going to upload this save to Paradox Mods, so if you want to be able to go through these yourself, you'll be able to do that. You'll just have to have Plop the Growables installed, obviously along with this region pack. Now with that out of the way, let's take a look at each of the assets. Let's begin with low density residential. And the first thing that you're gonna notice is that there are a ton of assets, which I personally think is very exciting. The second thing that you notice is that there are no 6-unit deep assets at all. And that's not unique to this zoning category. It's like that with most of them. So keep that in mind when you're building a neighborhood. You might not want to go that deep. If you want the most asset diversity, go for either a 4 or a 5 unit deep lot, but I'm going to give a little bit of an asterisk with that. And that's because many of these assets are duplicates. So you can see right here, regardless of whether you're zoning 2 units deep or 5 units deep, you have the opportunity to spawn the exact same building. And honestly, I'm good with it. In the real world, developers will place homes on a variety of lot sizes, and the only differences that you'll have are the lengths of the driveways and the sizes of the backyards, and this really simulates that well. The other nice thing about this is if you were just to zone in a large neighborhood, you're going to get a very similar look for the homes in that neighborhood because the homes are available on all lot sizes. And just bluntly, these assets are outstanding. And the interesting thing is, I think for some of these, they could fit basically anywhere in North America. Like for this home right here, I could definitely find this home in my neighborhood in Madison, Wisconsin. There are some though, like this one, where that roof style is pretty unique to the Southwest. So hopefully we can recolor this. We'll have to check that out a little bit later on in the video. Another thing worth mentioning is that a couple of these assets have palm trees baked into them, but it's not all that many of them and they're easy to avoid. For instance, this asset is 5 units deep. If you don't want this to spawn, don't zone any 5 unit deep lots. And you can see that reasonably, most of the lots do not have palm trees. So if you want it to have that vibe, you're likely going to have to add some on your own. And for the lots that do have palm trees, it's easy enough to remove them with better bulldozer if you're using mods. Another thing I find worth mentioning is that these buildings right here appear to be carriage-loaded lots. So that means that you should have an alley behind these. And when you look at this in Better Bulldozer, you can see that there's actually vehicular access to the back. So if you want a neighborhood with lots of carriage-loaded lots, zone 4 units deep. These are exclusive to that zoning category. And just in general, these are lovely assets. These are the kinds of homes that you find not just in the Southwest, but reasonably all over North America. And because of that, I just adore them. They're just beautiful looking assets, some ranch style homes, some 2-story homes, and some more modern looking homes. So you can have kind of whatever you want with these assets. And honestly, for this zoning category alone, if you're going to be building a North American build, I think that the Southwest region pack is almost a requirement because these are without a doubt the best single family homes for a North American build. Next up, we have medium density residential. And just like the low density residential, there are a ton of assets in this zoning category. And regardless of how deep of lot you're zoning, you're going to get a decent amount of asset diversity. That is, unless you're going to zone 6 units deep, because once again, there are no 6 unit deep buildings in this zoning category. Now, there is a small asterisk to that I'll get into in just a minute. But first, check these assets out. These are just beautiful. I love that you can either have a modern building or a historic building, and they will spawn in right next to each other, giving a neighborhood a sense of history, which feels really realistic to me. And some of these assets have a very cool party trick. So these right here are just beautiful buildings. These are the kinds of buildings that you would expect to see in San Francisco, but honestly could be found in many towns all across North America. That's not what I like about this. What I like about this is that this is a wall-to-wall building, but it has windows on the side. So that means it'll look good as a standalone building, it'll look good as a corner building, and if you want to place these side by side, it looks marvelous. It looks wonderful. It looks like one cohesive structure. Now, part of this is the illusion of having the same color. You can't control it in a vanilla game, but boy, oh boy, that looks wonderful. And I said that many of these buildings could be found in any city in North America, and I stand behind that with the exception of this one, which has a palm tree. There are a couple of buildings that have palm trees. If you want to avoid them, don't zone 5 unit deep lots. I believe that those are the only ones that actually have palm trees. Now, one thing to notice about this category is that as the buildings level up, they get taller. This makes me really wish that we could lock buildings in place because sometimes you want a 3-story building and not a 7-story building, and you really don't have much of a choice if you have this asset pack in a vanilla game. That said, I do appreciate that these are true medium density buildings. Nothing is all that tall. You got some 5/1s, some 3/1s. You got some historic buildings that get to maybe 6 stories tall. Nothing all that overwhelming, which means that you could use these in a variety of builds. Now, about that asterisk, there are a bunch of corner lot buildings that you can't really tell are corner lot buildings by looking at this. This one right here is probably fairly obvious. This is a right corner piece. There is no left corner piece that matches this. So I think that that is a deliberate design choice so that your blocks end up looking varied. But if you're trying to have a cohesive building, that might frustrate you. You're going to have to probably plop some things, rotate things specifically to get the exact look that you're going for. And this became apparent to me when I looked to build a whole bunch of these buildings right here, because this is a right-hand corner piece. There is no mid-block piece and there is no left-hand corner piece. Not the end of the world. You can always add in a pedestrian road or something like that to get it to spawn in, but it's something to keep in mind if you're searching for this specific building. And I've got to point out this asset. This is a 3x6 apartment building, and I just love this thing. Not only is it incredibly beautiful, but it doesn't have any parking associated with it, which means that it's very, very, very versatile. It means that if you want to use it as an apartment building in a very urban block, you could do that. If you want to add some parking behind it, you can make an apartment complex. Just in general, it's a very interesting asset and one that I'm going to use all over the place. And bluntly, that goes for the rest of these as well. These are some of the best mid-rises in any of the region packs in general, and I think they're absolutely essential for a North American build. Next up, we have medium density row homes, and I absolutely adore these. There are 4 different architecture styles. Got some Art Deco, Spanish style, you got Victorian, and then a modern, more contemporary style. And they're even though there aren't that many assets, because there's that much diversity and there are this many different heights, it makes it feel like there's a lot going on when you zone them side by side. I also love that you get a variety of colors. You can see it happening here with the Art Deco, but watch this. I grab this one and I place it a couple of times, different colors every time, and that makes it feel like there's a lot more variety than there really is. These are absolutely essential if you're trying to build on a hill. That's one of the things I like the most about these, is that they can really conform to terrain well because it's only 1 unit wide. But I also love that you can control the architectural style at least a little bit. If you want Art Deco, zone a 2-unit deep building. If you want to have one of the other styles, zone a 3-unit deep building. There are no 4, 5, or 6-unit deep buildings, so you're going to want to use these on narrower blocks or on side streets, but they're absolutely lovely. Next up, we have mixed residential. And if you want the most asset diversity, you're gonna wanna go for either 4 or 2-unit deep buildings in this category. And I'm just gonna be upfront with you, these are some of my favorite assets in the game generally. And that's because they do a lot of things that I really, really like. First of all, look at how historic these buildings look. These don't look brand new, they look 100 years old, 150 years old. They look weathered, they look like things have changed over time. At one point, maybe this was entirely brick in the front, and during the 70s, they decided to put stucco over some of the brick. Maybe you don't like that aesthetic, but it happens, and this is the kind of thing you find all over North America, which I love so much. I also love, look at the side of this. You can see that they've put some sort of plaster on the side, and it's falling off, and it's breaking and cracking, and you can see the brick being exposed underneath it. How cool is that? But what I like the most is that there are windows on the side. And I know I'm a stickler about this, but it makes the assets really easy to use in a variety of ways. For instance, let's say you want to take this and have 2 of these side by side. No big deal. The windows get covered up and it looks completely natural having these side by side. Look at that. The fronts even change. But if you want to have this right here with maybe some sort of a pocket park right here, there are windows right here. And what that means is that this has been converted to be an apartment and it has a legal bedroom. And it just looks like it's finished right here, which is what I've always been looking for. And on the back side here, you've got some windows and doors as well. And if you decided to butt these up nice and tight with one another and use Move It to pull these in, it's not going to look unusual. At least not if you get them nice and straight. That's pretty darn good though. I really like the way that that looks. But I also love the diversity of the architectural styles. So these buildings in the back look like they're Art Deco. These look fairly traditional, turn of the 20th century building, mid 1800s building that you might see in a downtown, basically anywhere in North America. These look very San Francisco. These look like they're refurbished versions of this building, maybe just buildings that are built to kind of have that vibe. And these are just found everywhere. If I wanted to rebuild Madison, I'd need to have these buildings. This looks like a place where I used to get bagels every day on the way to work. And then right here, we've got some more of the newer looking 5/1 buildings. But instead of having apartments on the bottom, now we get a nice mixed use building with maybe a laundromat at the bottom or a place to get a cup of coffee. And you see these same patterns in a variety of sizes, so you can use these on a variety of different block types in a variety of different types of cities. And I just love that so much. It also means that if you zone these in, there's a better chance that it's just going to spawn something that fits. Just absolutely outstanding. And then right here, we get some of the larger assets, fairly modern looking apartments with maybe restaurants or bars at the bottom. These are the sorts of things that are actually being built in my city right now. In Madison, the building that looks kind of like this is called the Galaxy Building, and it has Google in there and Microsoft and an incubator. And it's also got a theater venue attached to the back of it and a really nice restaurant in the ground floor. So these are very modern looking buildings. Really, really like the way that these look. And in general, I think that all of these mixed residential buildings are going to have a ton of utility regardless of where you're building your city in North America. Next up, we have low density commercial or low density business. Now, these are really nice assets and they cover everything from way over here to way over here. I divided them in half though, because these are kind of just general purpose businesses and these right here are motels. So I figure we'll take a look at them individually. Now for the general businesses, there are a variety of buildings across every single asset size, with the exception of 5 units deep. There's only one asset if you zone a 5 unit deep building. This is one of the few categories though that has 6 unit deep buildings, so keep that in mind if you're going to be zoning in some low density businesses. And just in general, these are the sorts of auto-oriented businesses that you'd expect to see in many Californian cities, many small towns across North America, many places in North America in general. If you're going to create kind of a strode, you're going to want some of these buildings here. Some of these just look like very recognizable to me. Like these look like a Chipotle or like a Qdoba. This right here kind of reminds me of a classic Denny's. Kind of has that classic Denny's look. Really, really like that. This Wingbacks looks like a Wingstop. This kind of looks like a Culver's without a drive-through. And this one back here kind of reminds me of an Olive Garden or something of that nature. So you could just kind of feel what they're going for here. And if you're looking to create a certain sort of building, I'm guessing that you'll be able to use these assets. This brightly colored building back here reminds me of a WAMU bank that I saw in Los Angeles when I lived there. And then of course, right here, we've got our traditional fast food with a drive-through. Think of like a Taco Bell. Love that it's got this nice sign right here, just screaming out, this is an auto-oriented use. You don't walk to this, you drive to this, which you might not like it, but these things exist all over the place. And as we get to some of our wider uses right here, I mean, this right here reminds me of In-N-Out. And then some of these others just remind me of strip malls that you'd see basically anywhere. Oh boy, I really love this asset. So this looks identical to a Cop's grocery store that was on Park Street here in Madison. It's a fairly common design for a grocery store from maybe like the 1950s. And then as it gets leveled up, this looks like a more modern grocery store. And this, I'm not exactly sure what this is, but it's still a very nice modern looking business. And then we have our motels. And these are the kinds of motels that are basically ubiquitous in every single city in North America. If you've been in a small town and needed to spend the night, you probably went to a place like this. I think I stayed in a motel like this in Kearney, Nebraska when I got snowed off the interstate and I had to stay somewhere. Bought a place that looked just like this, stayed there for the evening. This right here reminds me of like a Best Western. And you can see that we've got them in a variety of depths, both 2 and 4 units deep. And they're a variety of widths as well. It just kind of changes the parking lot. Gives you a little bit more variety in terms of the way that the assets look. Now right here, these remind me of very classic American motels. If you imagine driving along Route 66, this is the kind of motel I expect to see along that route. Basically a bigger version of some of the smaller ones that we just took a look at. Same thing right here. It looks like a gigantic La Quinta or something like that. And again, they change the different sizes as you get to some of the larger assets. So very attractive looking. Again, could fit in a variety of cities, a variety of sizes. You basically see these everywhere. And these are absolutely lovely assets. Between these and the mixed residential buildings that we just took a look at, I think that these basically invalidate all of the vanilla buildings for me, at least in the low density commercial and the mixed residential. This is what I want in my city. Next up, we have low density offices. And these might look really curious from this point of view because there's a lot of repetition, but I really like this for 2 reasons. Number one, the assets are incredibly attractive, which we'll take a look at in just a second. But number two, the different sizes of the lots give you different parking lot sizes, which means they fit different contexts. If you want less of a parking lot or no parking lot because you want it in a relatively urban area, zone something that's not as deep. If you want it to fit a suburban context, you'd zone something that's 6 units deep and you will get that right here. Now again, there are a couple of 6 unit deep variations with this one, none that are 5, some that are 4, some that are 3, and some that are 2. And just look at how adorable these assets are. They're incredibly detailed. These are the kinds of offices that I think have been a little bit of a blind spot in Cities Skylines to the kinds of buildings that are kind of ubiquitous throughout all of the USA. And I just really love them seeing these in the game because I would much rather have a block full of these with some walking paths behind them or some parking lots than some of the assets that we have right now, which are large buildings that have very few employees. So seeing a building that's this size have 13 employees, obviously in the real world, this building would have more than that, but still, it makes a ton more sense than seeing something that's 6 by 6 with 13 employees. And generally, these are fairly basic looking assets. There's a lot of repetition. Again, you get the different building sizes, but these are found basically everywhere. And I also love that when you get the different sizes like this, you could create an office park, for instance. It reminds me of the place that my kids had their daycare at. Had a bunch of buildings that looked just like this one, wrapped around a parking lot with a daycare on one end of it, so that the people working in the offices could drop their kids off at daycare, people driving by could drop their kids off at daycare, and the buildings were all a variety of sizes to make a cohesive office complex. And as I mentioned with the parking lots, you can see that these 3 assets right here are identical to these 3 right here. The main difference is that you're gonna have a parking lot spawn right here if you zone a larger asset. So if you're the kind of person who wants to detail your own parking, maybe you go for something like this. If you want it in a more urban context, maybe you go for something like this. If you want it to be suburban or you don't want to deal with detailing, zone 4 units deep. The exact same thing with 6 units deep as well. You see some of those exact same assets, bigger parking lots. That is the main difference here. But all the assets are absolutely outstanding. They all look very, very nice. And because there is that repetition, you can combine them once again to make a cohesive development, which is absolutely awesome. And you're probably getting tired of me saying this. I'm going to replace a lot of the offices in my city with these because these look so much better than the vanilla ones, at least in my opinion. Then our final zoning category is high density residential. And these are lovely assets, though I will warn you, there are not many of them. So there are 3 different models for 2 units deep and 3 different models for 4 units deep. They are very nice. I love the way that they level. They get more detailed. You can see this one right here, for instance, gets a nice green rooftop, a nice place to hang out. They get a little bit taller as they get bigger, and they're not overly tall. So if you're trying to make kind of a mid-sized city, I think that you're going to end up using these a ton. Now, just like some of the other assets in this pack, I love that there's a mixture of kind of historic looking red brick assets and some of the more modern glass and stucco looking assets. Just gives you a little bit of variety. You can see that the colors are changing here, so there's a bit more variety because of that. And just generally, they're very nice looking buildings. Now, one thing you're going to probably want to keep in mind as you're building these is that you're likely going to need to place some parking next to them because you can tell that there's not all that much, if any, included with these assets. It looks like there are some garages underneath, but still a ton of street parking occurring. So you might want to add some parking lots or a parking ramp next to this. But in my opinion, a very valuable zoning category, particularly in mid-sized cities, or if you just want to have something very predictable zone in your cities. And now one of my favorite tests, our Recolor test. And in general, these assets do really well with Recolor, though there are a couple of exceptions. In some cases, you're going to see assets like this, where maybe a specific variant of an asset will have a portion of the building that can't Recolor. That's pretty common. There are also a couple of assets where you'll notice that there's one portion of the building that can't Recolor, and where maybe the primary color is inverted. To show you that, I'm going with red, blue, and green. And right here, the red is not recolorable. I think that's this little section right here. And then as we make our way through, in some cases, you're going to see buildings like this one where one of the colors is darker, and that's because there is an underlying base color. So if I were to turn this off, for instance, switch this all the way over, it looks like there's a black underneath there. And as a result of that, if I recolor this, I'm getting that black showing through. So that's why the green is a little bit darker right there. Some of the historic looking buildings are kind of unique as well. So right here, I've done a couple of interesting things. So we have the exact same colors, red, blue, and green. But for these buildings, the first 2 colors blend. So if you want to get red, you've got to turn the first 2 colors to red. Otherwise, you get purple. Right here, you can see that there is no yellow, but this main color is kind of a yellow. That's because the green is mixing with a red color. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging to change the color of this particular building, but at least you can do so because for many of the brick buildings, you can't do that. But before we take a look at brick buildings, I want to also point out that in some of the buildings that have stucco or siding, that can't recolor as well, though the EFIS does right here, the panels. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag until we get all the way over to these brick buildings. If you were hoping that you could have a cream colored building because you want to recreate Milwaukee, you can't do that. The brick doesn't recolor on most of these assets. And those exact same principles apply to the rest of the assets. So if a building has a lot of natural looking brick, it's not going to be recolorable. It means that for many of the offices and the high density buildings, there are accent pieces that you can recolor, but nothing more. but on the balance, you can recolor enough that you can give these assets their own unique flavor for your city. Next, we have our city service buildings, starting out with our healthcare facilities. The first one that we have right here is a medical clinic. Now, this is very similar in its base configuration to the vanilla clinic. The main difference is that it has fewer ambulances and the upgrade path isn't quite as high. That said, this is an absolutely beautiful asset. I love the brickwork on the outside. There is one extension, so it comes with 3 ambulances, which is less than you get with the vanilla asset, which I think this one comes with 5. Yeah, this one comes with 5. This one comes with 3, and you can add on 3 more and 30 patient capacity. For the vanilla variant, you can add on the ambulances and the extension wings separately. And bluntly, I think that this is a much nicer looking asset. Now, this always has palm trees, so if you want to get rid of those because you have a temperate build, you will need to use better bulldozer to get rid of those. That said, it's not all that hard. Boom, no palm trees. And it also comes with this absolutely beautiful looking hospital. This is it's just a marvelous model. Now, this is very similar to the vanilla hospital in terms of its cost. The main difference is that in its base configuration, this hospital just has more capacity. So it's kind of a scale there in terms of the cost. This one has twice the patient capacity. And in terms of ambulances, it's 100% the same. Now, this does have a couple of ambulance upgrades, which are pretty exciting. So you can add a West Bay, and this will actually add a helicopter depot on this side of the hospital, and as well as a garage. You'll start to see some of those ambulances parking up front. And you can do the exact same thing on the east end, and you can see it adds 1 more ambulance depot, and it also adds an additional 5 ambulances. So you can't increase the patient capacity, but it comes with it up front, and it gives you 2 medical helicopters, which is pretty darn cool. And just generally, the asset's beautiful. That's really what this one's all about. Wow, that's a striking building. Next up, we've got our education facilities. Now, this only comes with an elementary school and a high school, which I think is going to disappoint some of you, but these are probably the best high school and elementary school assets for a North American build, at least in my opinion. Now, one of the things I love about these is that there is no vanilla analog to these. They are completely their own assets, though the price scales appropriately, just like the healthcare buildings. So for this one, it has 1,000 student capacity and a couple of upgrades. So if we add on the first upgrade, we get an extension in the back of the building. This adds on 500 student capacity, and it looks totally natural, looks outstanding. The second upgrade is an additional 1,000 student capacity, and I want you to look at how this one happens. This is going to take the place of this parking lot, and it adds a breezeway. I just love that so much, so thoughtful. And then the final upgrade is an annex building. So this adds an additional 750 student capacity. And this is a sub building, so you can add a couple of these if you want to. And one of the things I love about this is if you add it just right, it looks totally natural being right behind the school. So absolutely lovely. I could see using that as an administration building and getting the extra student capacity, or just having it be a disconnected building in the back of the school. Looks really nice. This is the first really nice looking school campus that is perfect for a North American build, all the way down to having the bus drop off in the front. Really, really lovely asset. And it's much the same story right here for the high school. So no vanilla analog for this one, 1,200 student capacity and a bunch of upgrades. Now, this is a massive asset, but many high schools in the US anyway are absolutely massive. Now, there are some upgrades here, and these are going to feel very Californian or very Southwestern generally because of how they occur. But the first upgrade is not one of those. So we get the library, and you can see it adds a library in the back. But I want to point out one thing. You can see that right now it looks like this would just be kind of in the middle of a green field. When you add it, it adds a bunch of sidewalks, which is just a nice detail. It's really, really cool. We can also add a gymnasium. This is probably my favorite upgrade in this entire pack, because when you add it on, it goes right on top of those basketball courts and adds even more student capacity. So that first one was 230. The second upgrade was 240 and more attractiveness. And then our third upgrade is a small classroom building. So this just adds 200 student capacity. And this one kind of hints that it should go right here. And the reason that I say that is the color of the path. So if I add this right here, you see I get this kind of tan path going into the gray one. Looks a little bit weird, but you could definitely do that if you wanted to. In addition to that, there's also a large classroom building. So that first one, 200. This large classroom building, 500. This is much the same as that one. It adds 500 student capacity. and it has this tan trail that comes off from it. So you're gonna wanna be really thoughtful about how you place these. You're gonna wanna give this asset a lot of space because it can grow over time, but it is lovely. The only criticism I have of this asset is that there is no stadium. And for a North American build, stadiums are just so incredibly common. So you're likely gonna wanna grab one from one of the other assets, one of the other high school assets, but really that's a small quibble. You could also add on this American football field, and bluntly, now it feels like an American campus. Very, very lovely assets. Next, we have our fire protection buildings. And these are basically reskins of the vanilla assets, which I think is lovely. So right here, we've got just our normal firehouse. This has the exact same cost and capacity as the vanilla variant. You can also add on a maintenance bay, which gives you an additional 4 fire engines, just like you can do in the vanilla asset. And in my opinion, this asset is just absolutely beautiful. I love this one so much. I'm going to use this one instead of this one, basically from here on out. And then the other fire asset that we get is right here. This is our fire station. And this one's almost identical to our vanilla variant. The main difference is the upgrade path. So for this one, you get 3 upgrades: the training tower, the disaster aid office, and the firefighting helipad. The one thing that you're missing is you're not getting the garage extension. So you won't be able to get more fire engines at this one. It is what it is. This is what you get. But what you get is one of the most attractive fire stations in the entire game across all the region packs, at least in my opinion. It's a very neat looking asset. Very, very beautiful. And this one does come with those extensions like I mentioned. So the first one is our training tower. This occurs within the footprint of the building. The second one is the disaster aid office. This is a sub building, so you can place this across the street if you'd like to. And then you also get the firefighting helipad, which just love that. This adds that crosswalk right here, as well as a whole bunch of bushes and that firefighting helipad. And it's a really unique way of handling it. The way that extensions in general have been handled in this pack is outstanding. And this is one of the best for any asset in this pack, in my opinion. Then our final city service buildings are police stations. Now, these are beautiful assets. Once again, look at all of the detail here. And once again, there is no vanilla analog. So this is basically a modified version of the urban police station. This has more vehicles and fewer jail cells, but you do have a couple of upgrades here. So you can expand the jail cell capacity by 25. And you can also add this police car motor pool and get even more patrol cars. And these occur right in the footprint of the building. There's add-ons, and honestly, I love it. That looks really, really good. This one right here is the police headquarters. Compared to the vanilla police headquarters, this one is significantly smaller. It has more jail cells and the exact same number of vehicles in its base form. But you can't add additional vehicles. You can't add additional jail cells. The only thing you can add on to this one is the helipad. And again, beautiful building. I love that the badge on the front, that's kind of a mirroring of the vanilla counterpart, but it looks shinier, it looks nicer. The helipad looks awesome. Just everything about this asset is outstanding. I love it so much. And then finally, we have our signature buildings, and these are absolutely outstanding. So these first 2 are low rent apartments found underneath residential, and tell me you're a King Leno asset without telling me. Incredibly detailed. You can see that there's even a little bit of wear outside of the sidewalks through here. This is awesome. So these are both low rent apartment buildings. The first one doesn't have parking, the second one does. Although, don't fool yourself, that's not enough parking because each of these buildings can house 720 households, which is 1,431 residents in this building, 1,503 in this one. It's kind of a wild number. So as a result, there's a ton of street parking around here, which makes a ton of sense to me. And there's a ton of circling. So these things are going to generate a ton of traffic. So you're going to want to really be careful with where you place these. Now, again, these unlock with low rent cells being zoned. So this is 1,000 cells. This is 2,000 cells. And both provide a happiness bonus within a kilometer. So +4 here and +4 here. And no matter what you do on the variant of this asset that has the parking, you're going to see that everyone hangs out at the basketball court, which honestly is pretty funny. It's a Cities Skylines 2 thing, but it's pretty darn funny. Next up, we get 3 commercial signature buildings. The first 2 here unlock by zoning a certain number of southwestern commercial buildings. This one right here unlocks at milestone 1 when you have 20 southwestern commercial buildings in your city. And this final one right here unlocks at milestone 9 when you've produced a certain number of lodging goods. These first 2 are outstanding. So this right here kind of looks like a hipster bar. It's called Arts and Drafts. It increases entertainment and attractiveness citywide and makes people happy within a kilometer. The second one right here is the art supply store. This increases attractiveness citywide. It must do something to for the university education, though maybe not all that much. And it increases happiness within a half a kilometer in a fairly dramatic way. Now, this right here is the Westwood Center. This increases attractiveness citywide, provides 3 increased well-being within a kilometer. And I think it just has a bar up here. And then finally, we've got this absolutely majestic Sunshine Hotel, which increases attractiveness citywide and increases well-being by quite a lot within 2 kilometers. Now, the reason I love this asset is just how detailed it is. So you can see all of the detail that's gone into this building. It looks a little worse for the wear, but it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. I love all the fish that you see here. Perfect for any waterfront or hotel district. And then finally, we have the Twain Tower. This unlocks when you zone Southwestern office and have a server farm. This does a lot for your city. It increases overall office efficiency, increases interest in university education, increases the graduation chance, and it makes people happy within a wide radius. So it's a very cool building. And finally, for our recolor test with our ploppables, it's kind of a mixed bag. So the clinic right here, you can recolor that thing basically everywhere, but the hospital won't recolor at all. The schools, one of them lets you recolor just accents. The high school lets you recolor basically everything. The fire stations aren't recolorable at all. They are what they are. Same thing with the police stations. And then for the signature buildings, you can recolor the low rent apartments. You can also recolor this asset right here and this one, but the other 3 are what they are. But in general, they'll grant enough flexibility that I think you'll be able to do some really special things with these buildings. And then lastly, I just like to take a look at the assets at night. And what you can tell with all of these is that a lot of care went into making sure that these are well illuminated and that the illumination makes sense. Whether it's single family homes that get more light as they level up, or businesses that are newer having more light than businesses that are older, considering there are now lighting standards that likely didn't exist back in the day when a building was constructed 100 years ago. I also like that on some of the higher density buildings, the lighting appears to be random, not completely planned out. For the service buildings, I love the attention to detail. For instance, there's not much lighting here at the elementary school, but at the high school, there's a ton of lighting, considering there's lots of nighttime activities that occur at high schools, whereas the elementary school probably shuts down. And for the signature buildings, they just look so good. A bit of social commentary here with the low rent housing, with it being not well illuminated, maybe a little bit less safe. And that Westwood building, it feels like a bar that's hopping at night. And boy, oh boy, this hotel is something special. I think that this building might actually look more attractive at night than it does during the day, which is really quite an impressive feat. So just in general, these assets look as good at night as they do during the day, and I really encourage you to turn the lights off and take a look at them. Normally, this would be the time in the video where I show you what these assets look like in an existing build, but I'm going to do something different today because Paradox has offered to sponsor a video, and I think it would be absolutely amazing to make Segunda Beach feel more Californian. So as a result, we're going to redirect into another video, and we will convert almost every single asset in the city to be the Southwestern pack, so it feels like it's in California. I couldn't be more excited, so please stick around. But if you aren't sticking around, here's my final thoughts about this asset pack. This is absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love this one. These have some of the best growables of any of the region packs generally. Definitely the best for North American builds. You can tell that the asset creators are absolutely masters of their craft. I wish that there were some more city service buildings, but I feel that way only because the ones that we got are so good. Again, with this asset pack, I think having the ability to lock building levels is going to be really important if you want to create a certain vibe. And for the signature buildings, I have a feeling that some of you are going to want to place some of these assets more than once, in particular the Imperial Heights apartments. So I do think it would be valuable to have Anarchy and find it in your build so you could plop these a couple of times. So bravo to all of the asset creators. They knocked it out of the park with this one. This is one of my favorites, without a doubt. I'm going to use this one all the time. This one is Segunda Beach. This is how Segunda Beach feels different than Magnolia County. And I'm really hoping that with the one that comes after this, the next North American pack, I can convert a lot of Magnolia County to those assets. But we'll have to see. We'll cross that bridge when the time comes. For now, I'm going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things that you could have been doing and you decided to go over this region pack with me, and for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Again, I'll redirect this into another video, so if you want to hang out again, I'll be hanging out. If you want to download the guide, it's on my website. And if you want to download this save so you can look at the organization, that'll be available on Paradox Mods. Links are all in the description below. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.